Hey, what's up, Grinders? This is Dan Gaspar here with TJ Zwarych, and we are here for FanDuel Friday, this week's edition. It's Friday, July 1st, 4th of July weekend. Stay safe this weekend. TJ, do you have any big plans coming up?
Well, here in Canada today actually is Canada Day as we speak. But
yes, Toronto
it was
plays early.
it was my 29th birthday yesterday, so
Okay.
I appreciate the late start we're having on this one. I was up late celebrating that, and so looking forward to dive into this baseball slate. I have a take that I don't know if is a spicy take because it's about the chalkiest pitcher, but we got a fun one today.
Yeah, it's fun. Smaller Friday slate than kind of what we're used to because Canada Day. Like I said, Toronto is playing early. We got another early game, and then like three of them starting about an hour before lock. So it's a bit of a smaller slate than what we're used to, but it'll still be fun. And we can start with pitching. You kind of alluded to the Corbin Burns chalk, so I'm excited to hear what your take is with him. It sounds like you're going to take an aggressive stance on him one way or the other.
I think so. Now, I don't know how much I'm going to play today, but I like to always think about this in the mindset of if I was running 150. And I think no matter how many lineups I'm running today on FanDuel, I think it would be 100% Corbin Burns for me. I was debating maybe slipping in 5% Javier, 5% Cole, 5% Lance Lynn. But I honestly think my stance today would be, even though Burns is picking up a lot of ownership, I think 100% Burns would be the play for me at bare minimum 80%.
Yeah, we'll see where he eventually has, as you can see, or lands in terms of ownership. We have him at 28%. Maybe that goes up. Like I said, it's a little bit more of a condensed slate than we're used to on a Friday. Because it kind of is, and I feel like this is probably your stance. It's kind of hard to find somebody in a really good spot that can match him upside wise. Garrett Cole is the guy that stands out. He does have potential weather. Garrett Cole there in Cleveland. If you take a look at our weather page, we'll have to be monitoring that all night. So that could drive some ownership down on Cole and condense it to Burns even more. Christian Javier was a guy that was standing out in terms of, I think, our current projections were a little bit too high on him. So I watered down his projected ownership because I just don't see him being significantly high owned on a slate like this.
He's the one guy that, like, if I was doing the expert survey today, he'd be the one guy that I'd be the most afraid of being under the field on. And that's just simply because he has upside. Like, he's risky. He's facing the Angels. They got a lot of power. Or sorry, is he Texas?
He's Angels, yeah.
He's Angels, yeah. So they got a lot of power, but they also got strikeouts. And I mean, we've seen Javier this year. He's two different people depending on the day. Like, when he's on, he is as good as anybody. His last game out, he had a 7-inning. He went no hit for 7 innings, put up 70 points on FanDuel. So he'd be the one I'd the most be afraid of going underweight on. I don't think he outperforms Corbin Burns. I'm way more confident in Corbin Burns. However, he's the guy that I kind of view as the potential to match him.
Yeah, and you mentioned last week when we did this show how FanDuel, one starting pitching site, it's all about those raw points. You look at the game logs here. He's capable of giving you raw points. 70 points his last outing, FanDuel points. 50 against Cleveland, 46. So, yeah, I like that call. I didn't look into him too closely before the show. But if you go over to our Plate IQ tool too, you mentioned, yes, the top of that order has some power. Things drop off so fast. If you look at the bottom of the order, and there's just so many strikeouts in it. Like you said, 26.8% strikeout rate over the last 2 seasons for the lineup is a collective. So I can see that for sure. So he's your favorite guy if pivoting off of Burns, but the hot take is still 100% Burns.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, a lot of the Javier thing is going to depend on the Angels lineup today too. If we go out, like, not that their lefties outside of Ohtani and Walsh are that good, But seeing Rengifo, Stassi, Marsh, Velasquez, Wade, if Trout and Ward are the only, Stassi's a switch hitter, isn't he?
No, Stassi's righty.
Damn, I thought he was a switch hitter. If did that change this year? I could have sworn he's always been a switch hitter.
I don't think
so. But like, if Stassi, Ward, and Trout are the only right-handed batters in the lineup,
yeah,
I'm not. That just kind of affirms my stance on Burns, because Javier is just a wicked strikeout pitcher to right-handed batters. He's still good to lefties, but he's just wildly better to righties. So I would be a lot more interested in him if we get a more right-handed heavy lineup. But as we're projecting right now, we got a lot of lefties in it.
Yeah, and as you can see, even on the Plate IQ tool, we can look at the lefty-righty splits too. You mentioned still fine against lefties, but it takes another leap against righties. 39.2% strikeout rate against right-handed over the last 2 seasons versus 25.2%.
And that ISO, whew.
Yeah, the ISO difference is nearly double as well. So yeah, that's a good call too. Keep an eye on that lineup, because it could definitely work a little bit more in favor of him if we get more righties than expected, or if there's littered with a little bit more lefties like we have projected. Maybe not quite as good of a matchup as we think, but yeah, good note there. We will release lineups.
I'm gonna end up running 150, even though I wasn't planning on it today. Just anytime I do the Friday strategy show, it's just when you get the opportunity to kind of bounce ideas off somebody, talk about the process, it just makes me feel so much more confident than in my own head by myself. So I might end up dropping the 150 here again today. FanDuel's got a top heavy tournament today. I like it better when they split it up a little bit, but I mean, it's still $4 with the potential chance for 30K up there. And second is still 10. So it's not like it's a drastic drop, but it's tempting. Anytime it's below $5 to MME, I'm always tempted.
Yeah, you're talking about the $4 FanDuel squeeze. Make sure to enter that. That's a good tournament to multi-enter today. So, I mean, we talked about Javier as kind of the potential pivot. So again, this is just so strange on a Friday slate where it's tough to see, like the pitching depth is just so shallow. We're seeing so many guys with under 10% projected ownership. If anybody cracks double digit, that's not Cole, that's not Bassett, that's not Javier, who would it be?
Probably Lance Lynn. Probably maybe Joe Ryan. Ryan hasn't been that great lately.
Like Joe Ryan, yeah.
People like Joe Ryan. He hasn't been great lately. It's a solid matchup. I'd like it a lot better if it was in Baltimore. But I guess like maybe Lance Lynn. I really don't like the matchup for him. Like, I hate targeting pitchers against San Fran. They don't strike out that often, and they got a lot of power in it. They pinch hit guys they don't want in there and get you a better lineup. If we get, like right now, we're projecting Longoria, Flores, Estrada, Casali. 4 righties, that's not too bad. If they end up putting out a right-handed heavy lineup, like if we get Ruff in there, for some reason some of these guys are sitting, then I would be more interested in Lance Lynn. But again, if this is another lineup that has 5-6 left-handed batters in it, I'm just going to go all in on Corbin Burns.
Yeah, and I mean, as we continue to talk through what is really the lack of alternative pitching options, you can kind of see why, I guess, your take's not quite as spicy, but still, I mean, going all in on 150 lineups on one player, it's definitely an aggressive stance, even if it's not necessarily extremely spicy of a take.
And these days, it's not like the matchup against Pittsburgh is that much of a lock and load. Like, I have worries about Vogelbach and O'Neill Cruz and Sawinski. Having said that, Corbin Burns is the type of guy that he might give up a solo bomb to all 3 of those guys. Maybe he gives up 4 runs in this game. He could also have 13 strikeouts in 6 innings with those 4 runs given up. So he just, to me, has the combination of safety and upside, not because he is probably going to throw a no-hitter. There's some very good young hitters on this team. But it's about that he might strike out. He'll probably strike out double-digit guys to go along with the couple runs he could give up. And if he doesn't give up any of those runs, that's when we're probably seeing him breaking the slate.
Yep, totally agree there. I mean, I like the other side of this game, but not really on this slate. Rounzy Contreras, I like him as a prospect. I could see maybe taking a few shots there. As another guy that potentially has some strikeout upside. But I mean, outside of Javier, Burns, Cole, and even Contreras, we mentioned Ryan. Like, there's just not guys with a ton of strikeout upside. Blake Snell, I guess. Like, but that's ugly against the Dodgers. But just in terms of, guys that actually have high strikeout rates, he kind of sits up there. Marco Gonzalez has the matchup, but not the strikeouts against the A's. The A's have kind of shown a little bit more fight lately too. I mean, none of the Yankees pitchers looked great against them. Logan Gilbert Chalk was not great against them last night. I still think the Oakland lineup is terrible, so I wouldn't be surprised if Marco Gonzalez had a good game, but he's just a tough guy to kind of get behind.
Yeah, my thing with Marco Gonzalez is I almost always know I'm okay without him. Like, maybe he puts up a good game for sure. And if it's a 2-game slate and he's not picking up ownership and he's cheap, maybe I'll go to him. But like, he's not breaking the slate. He might put up 40 points today, but I'm fine without that. You know what I mean? Like, he's not. Yeah. I'm not worried about him putting up 60. So even though it's a good matchup, maybe I'd be more interested in taking a shot if he was in Oakland, where it's a bit better of a pitcher's park. But no, I'm not going to be getting to him today. Other potential interest of just like sprinkles, like the more I look at this, like I'm definitely going to be just getting at bare minimum double the field on Corbin Burns today, like just at the bare minimum. But looking at it, like I don't mind the idea of sprinkling in like less than 5% of some guys like Kaprelian, Cobb, even Merrill Kelly. I hate targeting, even though this game's in Coors. Merrill Kelly's seeing a very, very significant price decrease because of it, and he's getting a super crappy projection too. So nobody's going to be playing him. And like looking around the industry a little bit, it's not just our projection that's super low on him; it's everyone's projection that's super low on him. So he's gonna just the fact that he's better than a 7,800 pitcher, and Colorado is a very strong lineup against lefties, not the strongest against righties. He's got potential to put up a 7x-ish game. I'll have him in 1 to 5% of lineups. Tony Gonsolin against the Padres, they strike out a decent amount against righties. I'll put him in 1 to 5% of lineups, but these 1 to 5% are probably going to be closer to 2%, and it'll be instead of my at minimum 80%, we'll say at minimum 70% Corbin Burns today.
Gonsolin is like the weirdest, okay in real life, not great for fantasy pitcher that we've seen in a while.
All of these guys I missed, like I said, like yes, they might put up good games, but I don't know if their ceilings worry me. Like,
yeah, like Gonsolin, I think has some crazy low ERA on the year. He's 9-0, maxed out at 47 FanDuel points. Which is like, it's good, but I mean, it's not 60.
If Kaprelian gets his first 6-inning game of the season, he might put up 40.
Right.
But Corbin Burns might put up 70.
Right.
Like, that's the thing. So it's like we're going to talk about stacks, and we're going to talk about hitters a little bit. That's what I like about this show. It's early in the day. We're kind of going through it as we talk about it. And if we start seeing some of these stacks that are really inexpensive, and I'm not going to have a tough time getting to Corbin Burns, then it might just be time to hit the lock button. It's going to see as we go about that. It's interesting to see for me that our highest total on the slate is Colorado. I would have thought that Arizona's was going to be higher than Colorado. That's interesting to me, because if we end up seeing more ownership on Colorado, I will be even more interested in Arizona. But the top two stacks I'm interested in terms of raw points are going to be Minnesota and Arizona. And I do think we're going to be seeing the ownership gravitating there today.
Yeah, so the issue, and we'll move to stacks right now. You mentioned it with Burns, and maybe it could be good to talk, not necessarily why we think Arizona is a good stack, because they're going to be chalk. So talk to me how you're going to handle your Diamondback stacks if you're eating, so much Burns, because this FanDuel, what are you doing? This pricing on Arizona,
this
guy
is
over 3K,
wild.
This is the lowest I've seen their Coors pricing in a while. And they're going up against Antonio Sensatella, contact pitcher. He can be frustrating at times because he seemingly does okay at not getting absolutely blown up whenever I stack against him. But man, like these price tags, Christian Walker is the only guy above 3K. He's at 3,100. Everybody else under 3K. So very, very easy to play those guys with Corbin Burns. And I think that's going to be the most common approach. Pretty easily the most common approach. Are you okay eating Arizona chalk with those with those Corbin Burns lineups? If you're eating the Arizona chalk with Corbin Burns lineups, what are you doing to differentiate the rest of your lineup?
I am. I'll try and find a less chalky secondary stack. But again, if I'm running 150 and I'm having 130 of those Corbin Burns teams, people love making jokes of, people who run 150 lineups, they can make any possible combination. No wonder they win all the time. I can as somebody who's been a cash game player, a single entry player, 3 entry max, MME, I can absolutely promise and guarantee you, me and the 99.9% of multi-entry players, you lose almost every night that you play MME. Like, yes, your chance of finishing first is higher. Absolutely. That's why we do it. Yeah. But for example, it's going to be 600 entry fees for 150 lineups in that $4 on FanDuel today. And 90% of the time that I MME, I don't make my entry fees back. In that 10%, I usually or even 1%, I usually have a pretty darn good day. But you got to go in expecting to lose. So my thought process with this Burns thing is I actually can make pretty darn close to all the combinations I want if I'm only playing one pitcher. And now if that pitcher fails, I'm going to have a terrible day and I just have to eat it and move on to tomorrow. That's why you don't MME unless you have the bankroll to lose it. And I have to admit, me personally, just moved into a new house with a new wedding. I probably shouldn't be playing 100. I probably shouldn't be playing 150 lineups. Bankroll management is without a doubt the worst part of my DFS game, but it does seem like a fun night to do it. And I know that is something I got to work on. And in terms of getting different with Arizona, the best way I think I would try and do it would be getting underweight on somebody like an Alec Thomas, who's going to be batting second and is going to project really well and will probably end up being the chalkiest one. Maybe Marte, because he's at second base where it's a weaker position, but Thomas will probably be the highest owned outfielder today. And because of that, he's a very young hitter. Like, so if somebody like Mike Trout or Byron Buxton hasn't hit the ball in 10 games, I don't care, not even a little bit. These guys know what they're doing. They're veterans. They're stars. When it's a young player, I do like to look at the human element a little bit. Maybe something could be going on. They get nervous once they start going off a little bit. So if he's picking up the most ownership today, I definitely don't mind maybe just taking a slightly underweight approach there while going double the field on a guy like Christian Walker, who is my favorite batter in the lineup today. And he's playing at a keystone position, first base. He's not going to pick up as much ownership, but Sensatella has actually been worse to right-handed batters than he has been to lefties. And I think we're going to see a lot more ownership going to these left-handed batters today. And the other thing I really want to look at, especially with these Arizona bats, is if Sensatella has one plus skill, it's his ground ball ability. He doesn't give up a lot of fly balls. He does give up a lot of line drives, but he also gets a ton of ground balls. And you look at the guys in this lineup who hit ground balls the most and who hit the least amount of line drives. It's Alec Thomas and Kettle Marte, the same guys that are picking up the most ownership. So that's where I think I want to look to. The guy I'm probably going to have the most of today is Peralta. It's Varsho, even though he's in the lower half of the lineup. It's Christian Walker. It's maybe even this Kennedy guy who's barely been in the lineup, but he's hitting the ball in the air since he's come into the league so far. The biggest thing I'm going to be targeting is these Arizona hitters who can hit the ball up in the air.
And it's convenient that if this lineup comes out as projected, a lot of these guys you mentioned are like a good bottom of the half stack, right? Get some correlation, 5 through 7 or 5 through 8 there. Because those guys typically do see less ownership batting lower in the order. So
if everyone's going Rojas, Thomas, and Marte, I'll simply go Walker, Peralta, Varsho, Kelly.
Yep.
Kelly's been awful the last year, and he's finally starting to hit the ball again. He's always been somebody who's been a lot better against lefties, but he's one of those players I always notice on MLB The Show because I play a lot of MLB The Show, and he's got cards that are 67 overall and cards that are 95 overall because when this guy's hitting. And so he's another guy that gets the ball in the air. I don't really care about much else other than that because Sensatella is not striking anybody out. He's trying to keep the ball on the ground. So Coors Field, if they can hit the ball in the air, I'll take the chance that maybe it carries out of the park.
Yeah, I like that call. You kind of offhand mentioned Minnesota. I will say Minnesota plus Arizona stacks are going to be probably tough to differentiate too much if you're playing Burns. Buxton's price tag's low. He's going to be one of the highest owned guys on the slate. So Kepler's price tag is pretty low. So it might be a little bit difficult to differentiate, 4-man Minnesota, 4-man Arizona stacks if you're playing Burns, but maybe a 4-2 or a 4-1-1-1 type of night. Do you have anybody else? Any other stacks?
Goodness, I think I am just about to. Oh wow! There's just the lineup that I have already built that it makes me want to say, I don't know if I want to even MME today. I might want to go all in on this single entry because this is beautiful. This is beautiful. I got my Burns, I got my Minnesota, I got my Arizona. I think a few ways to differentiate. This is beautiful.
Yeah, and I do think you mentioned going single entry versus multi-entry on a lineup like that. Eat a little bit more chalk in those single entry lineups. Still differentiate where you can, but maybe not get as crazy as trying to aim for those 1% one-off type of guys.
And I mean, this as one of the the leads behind our projected ownership here is this early in the day. It's too tough to predict it. We don't even know lineups yet. Once that comes out later in the day, as the Vegas lines move, we'll have a much better idea of this. But as things stand right now, even with my Arizona guys in there, I got 2 guys sub 10% in there, and that's all I need. That's all I need. All I'm trying to do is just not have the same lineup as somebody else. So even with the chalky players, if I got some guys that are sub 10%, I'm okay with that for single entry.
Let's talk real quick before we sign off. Give me your favorite low-owned stack. So we talked about Minnesota. We talked about Arizona. Those are probably going to be 2 of the higher-owned stacks on the slate. Talk to me about a little bit sneakier of a stack here.
So I think my favorite one for tournaments that is not going to be picking up a lot of ownership is going to be Seattle. Kaprelian, we've seen him get blown up a lot. I'm always somewhat interested in targeting against Oakland pitchers whenever they're outside of their home park because their pitching stats are often inflated because of where they play half of their games. And so going into Seattle, that's one that I like quite a bit. They got a pretty high total and they're not picking up a lot of ownership so far. The next team in tournaments that I think I'd like quite a bit would probably be the Mets. Mets are a team that I always love, even if I'm not full stacking. The Mets are one of my favorite mini stacks in the league, just because you can go Nimmo, Lindor, and Alonso. You get 1, 3, 4. Nimmo's not expensive. The other two are. And so because of that, they never pick up a ton of ownership. And Alonso is one of the very best power hitters in the league. Lindor is one of the better hitters the league's had for the last 5 years. So that's a mini stack I always love. If you want to add Jeff McNeil, if he's batting fifth, Starling Marte, I'm totally good with that as well. So the Mets and Seattle would be my next two places I like going for tournaments, as well as the Dodgers. Snell, if he's off, Snell can just walk a ton of guys. The Dodgers are patient. They do actually strike out more than people realize against left-handed batters. But still, Snell's wild, and I'm always down to take chances on the Dodgers as well as the Astros. Dodgers and Astros are two teams that can always put up huge totals. The other team that fits that mold is the Yankees. However, I do think we're going to see this ownership creep up a little bit throughout the day against a low strikeout pitcher like Savali. I don't think the Yankees are going to be that low owned, and getting outside of their home hitters park, Yankee Stadium, if they are going to be chalky, I'm willing to get off of this team a little bit. However, if Judge and Stanton are the only guys picking up ownership, I don't mind mixing in some stacks with Rizzo and Donaldson in there as well.
Yeah, I agree with your sentiment. Yankees could probably pick up a little bit of ownership. Maybe we see some of that Minnesota and Arizona condense a little bit. Typically, we see it more spread out on a little bit larger of a slate. I like the Yankees call. My sneaky one, and then we'll sign off here. The Royals. Wish we still had Sal Perez here. Pineda coming off the IL, made a couple rehab starts. He's one of those guys that, again, when not pitching right, he allows a ton of hard contact. Saw that a lot in his Yankee days. So I like the Royals a decent amount here. It's kind of a lower owned sneaky stack. Maybe throw in some one-off with Bobby Witt or Whit Merrifield is kind of the 4-2-2 type of stack. Something like that. They'll be all pretty low owned as well. So,
and just because we recently talked about the Yankees, this just popped into my head, made me think about it. I think Joey Gallo is going to hit a home run today.
He's been catching some heat. We are a friend of RG who is in charge of the bat projections. I saw he sent out a tweet about Joey Gallo versus Brett Gardner. Apparently there's some Brett Gardner stands still out there. Not something I would like to, defend, to be Brett Gardner. Joey Gallo has been terrible this year. There's no defending that really, but he still has, hit 2 home runs in a game this year. That has happened, and that's what we're looking for with these guys. So Gallo definitely, I think, should enter your tournament pool today for sure.
It's halfway through the season. Is Gallo doing anything different than he's ever done ever?
Right. High strikeout guy, low batting average guy, still has a ton of power.
He has a 200 ISO against righties. He's hitting the ball hard 36% of the time, as opposed to 41% of the time, which is what he'd usually do, a 200 ISO instead of a 250 ISO. He's striking out at how much more of a clip this year? 1% more than he usually does. It's halfway through the season. He's going to have another 2-week stretch where he hits 8 home runs, and then it's going to look normal. He's batting 9th instead of 4th. He's getting less at bats this year than he usually does. He's still Joey Gallo. This is the exact same player as he's always been. He strikes out a ton, and when he hits the ball, he hits it far and in the air.
Yep, I'm with you there. Team Gallo, at least in terms of what we're really want, and that's home runs for tournaments. So
like the negative with him is his batting position. Like that's
right.
The difference of now and then is he probably has 20-30 at bats at this point, less than he did at any other point this season. And when you're a guy that strikes out this much, that's huge for him. And so because of that, hold on, let's see if I can do the math here. Are we at the halfway point yet?
We're close. I don't know records right now.
Okay, so assuming we're at the halfway point, he's had 158 at bats this year against right-handed batters. Cut this in half. That's 200.
We're very close to the halfway point. We're about 5 games short.
Yeah, so he's had about 30 at bats less than he would have against right-handed batters at this point than this season than last year. So there it is. Like that's your difference right there. With somebody that strikes out that much, who's not a contact guy, that's absolutely huge. This is still Joey Gallo. He's just in a crappier batting order than he used to be.
Yeah, he is who we thought he was.
Yeah.
Joe, this is where you do the Spider-Man picture of Joey Gallo in a Yankees uniform and Joey Gallo in the Rangers uniform. Nothing's changed. All right, so hot takes tonight from you are 70+% Corbin Burns, Joey Gallo hits a home run tonight. Anything else you want to throw in before we sign off?
I'm keeping it hotter. I'm going at least 85% Corbin Burns.
Okay, there it is. Corbin Burns, unmatched, unrivaled on this slate. Could he get outscored? Potentially, yes. But hey, he's the guy with the highest upside. I'm with you on Burns. I like the chalk tonight, unfortunately, with the hitters as well. So chalk, don't fail me now. That's going to do it though for today's edition of FanDuel Friday. Come back to us next week. I think it's you and me on once again next week. So we'll see you guys next week.